The Witch's Well of Gyeongju, a Korean horror story 저주받은 우물. The cursed well Soyeon was 18 years old and had spent the last 6 months trying to forget the day her best friend died. She lived with her parents in a small village outside Gyeongju in North Gyeongsang Province, a town famous for its ancient burial mounds and thousand-year-old temples, where the past pressed so close against the present that sometimes the two were difficult to tell apart. Her best friend Ji-woo had drowned in the river on an ordinary summer afternoon. One unexpected current, one moment of bad luck, and Ji-woo was gone before Soyeon could reach her. Soyeon had stood on the bank screaming for help that arrived too late, and she had carried that afternoon inside her ever since like a stone she could not put down. The grief that followed was not only hers. Ji-woo's mother, a quiet, intense woman named Mrs. Han, had loved her daughter with the particular ferocity of a parent who has given everything to a single child. When Ji-woo died, Mrs. Han had nothing left to hold on to. 3 weeks after the funeral, she took her own life. After that, Soyeon's nights became impossible. It started with screaming. She would wake up in the dark with no memory of what had frightened her, just the sound of her own voice and the feeling of something retreating from the edge of her vision. Her parents would rush in to find her sitting upright in bed, shaking, unable to explain herself. Her mother began sleeping in the same room with her. For several weeks this helped. The presence of another person, the sound of breathing, the small lamp left on in the corner. Slowly, the night terrors seemed to ease. Then, one night her mother decided it was safe to return to her own room. By morning, Soyeon was curled in the corner of her bed, knees to chest, staring at the wall. When her mother finally got her to speak, Soyeon described the dream. Mrs. Han had been standing in the corner of her room, not the version of Mrs. Han that Soyeon had known in life. Something older and colder, with eyes that caught the dark rather than reflecting light. She had been standing completely still and speaking in a low voice, repeating the same words. "One night I will come for you, and I will take you to the well." Then she had walked to the window, the closed, latched window, and stepped through it as though the glass were not there. Soyeon had woken up to find the window standing open. Her parents took her to doctors, 3 different ones, over 2 months. All 3 said the same thing. Profound grief complicated by survivor's guilt, producing nightmares severe enough to disrupt her waking life. The recommended treatment was rest, routine, a change of environment. Her father made a decision. There was a women's college in Gyeongju City, well regarded, with a small dormitory for students who lived too far to commute. He would enroll her for the new semester. New people, new surroundings, structured days. Exactly what the doctors had recommended. That night, Mrs. Han came back to Soyeon's dreams. She was more specific this time. "I know where they are sending you," she said, "and I know what is near that college. The Witch's Well, Manyeo-uul. I will meet you there, and you will not come back from it." Soyeon woke screaming and told her parents everything. Her father held her hands and spoke calmly, and told her that the Manyeo-uul was just a local story. An old stone well on the outskirts of the city that had acquired a reputation over generations. The kind of reputation that old things acquire when people don't have better explanations for bad luck. He said it firmly and kindly and with complete conviction. He enrolled her in the college the following week. The Hyangdan Women's College was a pleasant campus built on the edge of the city, where the urban streets gave way to low forested hills. Soyeon's dormitory room was small but comfortable. A single window looking out over the courtyard, a desk, a narrow bed. The well was visible from the road that ran behind the campus. Not dramatic looking, just an old stone structure, perhaps a meter across, surrounded by a low iron railing that the city had installed at some point to prevent accidents. Moss on the stones, a wooden cover that nobody seemed to maintain, old enough that its origins were genuinely unclear. Some records suggested it predated the modern city entirely. The stories about it varied depending on who you asked. Some said it was where a young woman had been drowned by her husband centuries ago, falsely accused of infidelity. Others said it was where a mudang, a shaman, had performed rituals that went wrong, leaving something attached to the site. Others said simply that people who went near it after dark reported hearing voices. What most versions agreed on was this: sometimes a woman was seen near the well at night, and sometimes the people who saw her went closer, and sometimes those people did not leave. Soyeon knew all of this. She had looked it up. She had done exactly what you should not do if you are trying to convince yourself that something is not real. She could see the railing from the campus road. She avoided looking at it. The other students in the dormitory noticed Soyeon within the first week, not because she was unfriendly. She was quiet and polite and made small efforts to connect. But she woke up screaming twice in the first 10 days, and the second time she had been screaming specific words. "She's standing at the window, she's standing at the window." The dormitory was on the 3rd floor. Word traveled the way word travels in small residential communities. Quickly, thoroughly, and with elaboration. By the second week, Soyeon was the girl who saw things, who woke up at night, who sometimes sat in her bed with the blanket pulled over her head and did not come out until someone knocked. She was not unkind about it, the students whispering. She understood it. She would have thought the same things about someone else, but understanding it did not make it easier. The college psychologist, a practical woman named Dr. Yoon, who had worked with students for 15 years and had heard most things, requested a meeting with Soyeon after the 3rd incident. Soyeon sat across the desk from her and answered questions carefully and tried to explain, for perhaps the 20th time in 6 months, what she experienced when she closed her eyes. She was midway through describing the most recent dream when she stopped. Dr. Yoon looked at her. "What is it?" "She's here," Soyeon said. Her voice was entirely flat. "She's standing behind you, to the left." Dr. Yoon turned around. "Nothing." "Soyeon?" "She's saying tonight," Soyeon continued, still in that flat voice. "She's saying she's going to take me tonight. She's moving toward the window now." Dr. Yoon turned back to Soyeon. She watched the girl's eyes track something across the room, something that moved from the left side of the room to the window with the slow deliberateness of something that is not in a hurry. Soyeon's eyes followed it all the way to the window. "She's opening it," Soyeon said. The window opened. The air outside was completely still. There was no wind. Dr. Yoon stood up and crossed the room and checked the latch, properly engaged, not loose, not faulty. She closed the window and latched it again. She turned around. Soyeon was looking at her with an expression that said, "Now do you believe me?" Dr. Yoon, who had spent 15 years being practical and rational, sat down at her desk and took a very deliberate breath. "You're going to sleep in my room tonight," she said. Dr. Yoon's quarters were in the faculty residential block adjacent to the main building, a comfortable 2-room apartment with a separate sleeping area. She set up a spare mattress beside her own bed and made sure Soyeon was settled before turning out the main light and lying down. She could hear Soyeon's breathing. Slow, regular, genuinely asleep as far as she could tell. Dr. Yoon stared at the ceiling for a while, cataloging the events of the evening and trying to find ordinary explanations for them. The window had been an old frame. Air pressure changes happened. She had been reaching for these explanations and almost having them when she heard the sound of breaking glass. She sat up. Soyeon's mattress was empty. The window, a new window in good condition that she had checked before going to bed, was broken. Not the kind of break that suggests impact from outside, the kind that suggests someone pushed through it from inside. Dr. Yoon ran. The campus guard had heard the glass and was already in the courtyard. 2 other faculty members came running. They found the broken window and Soyeon's empty mattress and understood immediately that something had gone very wrong. They searched the campus. They checked the dormitory, the common rooms, the academic buildings. Then someone remembered. The well, the road behind campus, the old stone structure with the iron railing and the wooden cover and the stories that everyone knew and nobody officially believed. They ran. They arrived in time to see her go in. Soyeon was standing on the iron railing, balanced on it, her arms at her sides, her face turned upward at the sky. She was not sleepwalking in the way that people look when they are sleepwalking. Her eyes were open, her posture was deliberate, she was entirely present. She stepped off the railing. The security guard lunged. He caught the edge of her sleeve. He held on. The other faculty members reached him and grabbed his arms, and they pulled together. From inside the well, sounds came up. Not wind, not water. Voices, women's voices, multiple of them, layered over each other in a frequency that the people present described afterward as feeling more than hearing, as though the sound originated inside the chest rather than in the air. And beneath the voices, laughter. Low, patient, the laughter of something that has been waiting for a very long time and has learned not to be impatient. They pulled Soyeon out. She was unconscious before they got her to the surface. She was breathing. She was unhurt. She had no memory, later, of leaving the window. When the guard looked down into the well, later, when the others had taken Soyeon back to the campus and he was standing alone at the railing in the early morning, he saw shapes in the water far below. Not fish, not debris. Shapes that suggested human forms, floating, facing upward. One of them seemed to be looking at him. He stepped back quickly from the railing and did not look again. The police searched the well the following morning. They found nothing. Soyeon left the college. Her parents came to collect her the following day, and she did not go back. She spent the next year in her village, slowly, carefully putting herself back together with the help of a therapist in Gyeongju City and the patient presence of her mother, who slept in her room again for 3 months without complaint. She does not dream of Mrs. Han anymore. Or if she does not remember it upon waking, which amounts to the same thing. The Manyeo-uul is still there. The old stone well on the road behind Hyangdan Women's College, with its iron railing and its wooden cover and its reputation that predates anyone currently living in Gyeongju by several generations. Students at the college know not to go near it after dark. This is not an official rule. It appears in no handbook, no orientation document. It is simply understood, passed from each year's students to the next, the way certain understandings are passed down. Some of the older students say that on quiet nights, if you stand near enough to the road to see the well but far enough away to feel safe, you can hear something. Not loud, not dramatic, just a woman's voice, patient and unhurried, saying a name. And if that voice ever says your name, if you ever hear it clearly, unmistakably calling specifically for you, walk the other way. Do not look back. Do not stop walking until you are somewhere with lights and people and noise. And do not, under any circumstances, go near the water.